The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly around the scout ship Seeker. Once shining with the silver-blue emblems of the Valen fleet, its hull now bore the marks of close calls and desperate evasions. Inside, Captain Gray leaned over the communications console, his slim, azure fingers trembling faintly as he examined the data one last time. "Are you sure this is wise, Captain?" First Officer Trell asked, her large amber eyes catching the dim glow of the emergency lights on the bridge. "The humans! When we last observed them centuries ago, they were primitive." Gray didn't look up. "What choice do we have?" "The A. Mort have already overrun 3 outer colonies in the past month. The homeworld will fall within weeks." The Seeker floated in the shadow of a barren moon, hidden from the relentless patrols of Mort scout ships. This system had been chosen based on ancient Valon records, which indicated it was close enough to Earth to send a signal, yet far enough from Valen territory to evade Mort detection. "The Council ordered all vessels back for the final defense," Trell said softly. Gray finally met her gaze, his pale face set with resolve. "And what can one scout ship do against the Mort fleet? At least this gives us a chance to try something new." Turning back, he pressed his hand against the transmitter pad. The ship's computer had spent days translating their plea into human languages, supplemented by visual data of Mort attacks and schematics of their weaponry and shields. "Message encoded and ready," the computer announced. Gray exhaled deeply. "Send it." A soft energy pulse rippled outward, carrying the desperate plea of a civilization on the brink. The message was stark. "People of Earth, we need your help. The Mort Collective threatens all free life. Your aid once saved others. Please respond. Trell." Watched the energy pulse fade into the distance, destined for a small blue planet several light years away. "What do you expect them to send? A diplomat? A scientist? A single ship?" Gray's shoulders sagged slightly. "Anything. Even a new perspective could help our scientists find something we've missed." What neither of them could foresee was that humanity had evolved in ways unimaginable since the Valen's last observation. On the lunar command station, Admiral James Wilson stood by a large observation window, his eyes fixed on Earth suspended in the void. At 62, his white hair spoke of age, but his posture was as rigid as when he had joined the United Defense Fleet 35 years earlier. "You're sure about the translation?" he asked without turning. Behind him, Dr. Lisa Park nodded, her attention on the tablet in her hands. "Yes, Admiral. The linguistics AI confirms it with 98.7% accuracy. It's genuine." A distress call had arrived from an unidentified species calling themselves the Valen. They claimed to be under attack by an entity known as the Mort Collective. Admiral Wilson turned away from the window, surveying the command center as technicians, and officers worked to process the incoming transmission. "They've sent detailed technical data alongside the distress signal," said Commander Ben Foster, the fleet's tactical officer. "The Mort appear to be a hive mind species integrating synthetic and organic biology. Their ships utilize quantum-linked shields and plasma-based weaponry, formidable but within our ability to counter." Wilson approached the central holographic display, where projections depicted angular, insect-like Mort vessels engaged in battle with smaller, more elegant ships. The latter were clearly losing. "Location?" Wilson asked. "The Valen homeworld is about 40 light years from Earth," Foster replied. "With our new jump drives, a response fleet could arrive in under 2 weeks." Wilson studied the data closely. It was evident the Valen had no real understanding of humanity's current capabilities. Their message suggested they expected, at best, a diplomatic envoy or a solitary ship. What they couldn't know was that humanity, driven by its own brushes with annihilation, had unified centuries ago and built a fleet designed to ensure such threats would never again endanger their existence. "The Security Council will need to authorize any significant deployment," Dr. Lisa Park reminded him. Wilson nodded thoughtfully. "Schedule an emergency session for Aero 800 tomorrow. Compile all this data for presentation." He paused, his gaze lingering on a simulation of Mort vessels overwhelming a Valen colony. And begin quiet preparations to mobilize the Third Fleet. 3. Days later, the chamber of the United Earth Security Council fell silent as Admiral Wilson concluded his presentation. The Mord Collective embodies the kind of threat this fleet was created to confront, he stated, standing resolutely before the 12 council members. Their behavior, based on the data provided, is systematic. They consume all resources in a system before moving on. The Valen are merely the next in their path. Councillor Rivera leaned forward. And you propose we commit substantial forces to aid an alien species we've never encountered? This isn't humanity's fight, Admiral. With respect, Councillor, Wilson replied firmly. It became our fight the moment their signal reached us. This fleet wasn't built solely to defend Earth. It was built to uphold the ideals that brought us together as a species. Ignoring this call for help sends a message to our allies, to ourselves, that we stand by while free life is consumed. He paused, scanning the faces of the council. And practically speaking, if the Mort devour the Valen, they'll grow stronger. It's only a matter of time before they set their sights on us. The council president, Dr. Omar Katan, regarded Admiral Wilson with a measured gaze. What exactly are you proposing? I recommend deploying the Third Fleet under my command, Wilson replied. 50 ships, including the dreadnoughts. Deterrent and resolute. We've studied the Morda's vulnerabilities and believe we can halt their advance. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Deploying 50 ships would mark the largest mobilization in human history. That would leave our core systems with diminished protection, Councillor Chen pointed out. Wilson nodded. It's a calculated risk, but our perimeter defenses are more than sufficient to handle any known threats during the fleet's absence. After hours of deliberation, the Council reached its decision. Humanity would respond. Aboard the Seeker, Captain Gray stared in disbelief at the incoming message from Valen High Command. You've detected what? He asked, certain he had misunderstood. A massive energy signature approaching the outer boundary of Valen space, the commander, on the secure channel repeated. Initially, we suspected it was a new Mord battle group, but the readings are entirely different. Preliminary analysis suggests multiple ships, a large number of them. Gray's hearts pounded. From Earth? We can't confirm, but the trajectory matches. Gray turned back to his console, struggling to comprehend. What exactly did you ask these humans for? I just asked for help, Gray murmured, staring at the overwhelming data streaming across his screen. Energy, readings far surpassing anything the Valen fleet had ever produced. As the Seeker raced homeward, Gray's mind churned with questions. What kind of civilization could answer a distress call with such immense force? What had humanity become in the centuries since they last observed them? And would their arrival mean salvation or a new kind of peril? The Valen's survival now depended on a species they had gravely underestimated. The massive hangar bay of Lunar Station Alpha buzzed with activity. Shuttles zipped between larger vessels, ferrying supplies and personnel. At the center of the controlled chaos loomed the UES Deterrent, a dreadnought-class warship stretching nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern. Its matte black hull seemed to absorb light, appearing as a void carved into space. Commander Jack Reed stood on the observation deck, watching the final stages of preparation unfold below. At 45, he had spent most of his life in space, commanding vessels ranging from small patrol ships to battle cruisers. Silver streaks in his dark hair and a faint scar along his jaw bore testament to battles fought and won on humanity's frontier. Quite a sight, isn't it? Admiral Wilson's voice broke his thoughts. Reed turned to see him approaching, his white uniform pristine despite 36 hours of non-stop coordination. 50 ships, Reed said, shaking his head slightly. The largest fleet we've ever assembled beyond the solar system. Wilson joined him at the railing. "And you'll be leading them into uncharted space against an enemy we've only observed through Valen transmissions." Reed's expression remained steady, but his eyes sharpened. "The simulations are promising. If the Morty technology aligns with Valen reports, our phase-shift weapons should bypass their shields." "Theory and practice aren't always the same," Wilson cautioned, handing Reed a data pad. "Here are your final orders. The fleet jumps in 6 hours. Reed accepted the pad with a nod. "What do we know about the Valen?" "Not much. Beyond the distress call. They're humanoid, reportedly peaceful, advanced enough for interstellar travel, but clearly behind us militarily. Dr. Miller will brief you during the journey." "And if this is a trap?" Wilson's expression darkened. "Then we'll handle it. But we don't leave calls for help unanswered." Dr. Anna Miller strode purposefully through the corridors of the UES deterrent, weaving around crew members securing equipment in preparation for the jump. At 36, she was widely regarded as the foremost expert in xenobiology and first contact protocols, though most of her work had remained theoretical, until now. Clutching her datapad tightly, she entered the ship's expansive main laboratory. The space buzzed with activity, its walls lined with advanced equipment capable of analyzing everything from atmospheric samples to alien tissue. A team of 20 scientists worked diligently, poring over the data received from the Valen. "Dr. Miller," her assistant Tom called out, waving her over. "The preliminary analysis of the Valen biological data is complete." Miller moved swiftly to his station, scanning the display. Her eyes lit up as she processed the results. "Interesting. Oxygen breathers. Carbon-based like us, but their cellular structure is strikingly different. Their blood chemistry, fascinating." "Should we be worried about cross-contamination?" Tom asked, his voice laced with concern. Miller shook her head. "Their pathogens wouldn't recognize our biology as viable hosts, and ours wouldn't affect them either, but we'll follow full containment protocols regardless." She moved to the center of the lab, where a holographic display showcased the Valen homeworld, a vibrant blue-green planet orbiting a yellow star, eerily similar to Earth's sun. "The real question," she mused, more to herself than to anyone else, "is why they contacted us specifically. Their message claimed we once saved others, yet there's no record of humanity encountering the Valen before." Tom frowned. "Could it be a case of mistaken identity?" "Possibly," Miller said, tilting her head. "Or perhaps it predates our unified historical records." She zoomed in on an image of a Valen from the transmission, a humanoid figure, with blue-tinged skin, large amber eyes, and a willowy frame. "Either way," she continued, "we're about to make first contact with 2 new species simultaneously. One appears peaceful, the other hostile. This could either be humanity's greatest diplomatic achievement," Tom said grimly, "or the start of the largest interstellar war we've ever faced." Captain Gray stood before the Valen High Council, feeling the weight of their disapproving gazes. The council chamber, once a haven for measured deliberation, now served as a war room. Holographic displays projected the grim advance of the moored fleet, and more unsettlingly, the unknown Earth ships. "You've brought another unpredictable element into an already desperate situation," Council Leader Vax said, his weathered face etched with worry. "These humans might be as dangerous as the Morda." Gray straightened his shoulders, steadying himself. "The ancient records clearly state that humans defended the Lorathi 3 centuries ago when the Crystal Horde threatened their worlds." "Records. From a time before the Great Collapse," Counselor Mira countered, her tone sharp. "We can't verify their authenticity, and even if accurate, humanity may have changed drastically since then." "They have," Gray conceded, nodding. "The energy readings from their fleet suggest technology far beyond what our records documented. But the fact that they've responded to a distress call implies their fundamental nature remains compassionate." The chamber doors slid open abruptly, and First Science Director Pell rushed in, his usual calm shattered. "New data from our long-range sensors," he announced breathlessly, connecting his datapad to the central display. "The human fleet, it's enormous. 50 vessels, many larger than anything in our defense forces." The chamber fell silent as the images materialized. The Earthships were sleek and imposing, their designs predatory and bristling with weaponry the Valen couldn't even identify. "By the first light," Counselor Mira whispered, her voice trembling. "What have we done?" Gray stared at the projections, a complex mix of hope and apprehension flickering across his face. "We've called for help," he murmured, "and they've answered." The Valen Council leader, Vax, rose slowly, his expression grave. "Captain Gray, you initiated this contact. You will now bear responsibility for its consequences. Your rank is reinstated, and you are hereby appointed as the official liaison to the humans. Meet their fleet at the edge of the system and ascertain their true intentions before they reach our home world." Gray bowed deeply, suppressing the surge of anxiety twisting in his chest. "I understand, Council Leader." As he left the chamber, his thoughts raced. The humans had responded with a force far beyond anything he had anticipated. Would this be the salvation of his people or their undoing? In 3 days, when he would meet these humans face to face, the answer would reveal itself. Commander Jack Reed stood on the bridge of the UES deterrent as the countdown to the fleet's emergence. From jump space tick to 0, around him the crew moved with disciplined precision, monitoring systems and preparing for their arrival in Valen space. "Jump complete. In 3, 2, 1, the navigation officer announced. The main display flickered, then stabilized, revealing a sprawling star system. Multiple planets orbited a pale yellow star with the faint blue-green glow of the Valen homeworld visible in the distance. "Sensors detect multiple vessels approaching from the inner system," reported the tactical officer. "Small ships, with minimal armament, likely a greeting party," Reed nodded. "And the moored? Long-range sensors indicate significant fleet activity 2 light days out on the far side of the system. They appear to be massing for an assault." Dr. Miller, standing at the edge of the bridge after being granted access for the arrival, stepped forward. "Commander, the approaching vessels are transmitting a message." Reed gestured to the communications officer. "Put it through." The main screen displayed a slender alien with blue-tinted skin and large amber eyes. When it spoke, the ship's AI seamlessly translated its words. "Greetings, vessels from Earth. I am Captain Gray of the Valen Defense Force. On behalf of my people, I welcome you to our system and thank you for answering our call, though I must admit we did not expect quite so many of you." Reed held the alien's gaze, his tone measured. "Captain Gray, I am Commander Jack Reed of the United Earth Fleet. We received your distress call and have come to assist against the Mord Collective. Request permission to approach your homeworld and establish formal communications." Gray's expression wavered, his voice carrying a slight tremor. "Permission granted, Commander. And thank you. Your arrival has given my people something they had lost." "What's that?" Reed asked. Gray's reply was simple, yet profound. "Hope." As the human fleet advanced deeper into the system, the Mord Collective adjusted their vectors, their hive mind registering the newcomers and recalculating their strategies. The gathering storm was about to break. The shuttle bay of the UES deterrent gleamed with pristine precision, every surface polished to military standards. Commander Reed stood at attention, flanked by Dr. Miller and a small honor guard, their gazes fixed ahead as the Valen envoy began their approach. The shuttle gently settled onto the landing platform, its smooth blue-silver hull starkly contrasting with the dark, angular form of the human warship that surrounded it. "Remember," Dr. Miller whispered softly, "their body language is different. From ours, what might seem like aggression could be curiosity, and what looks like submission may actually be respect. Reed gave a slight nod, his face carefully composed, hiding the tension simmering beneath. This wasn't just any first contact. It was unfolding under the looming threat of an enemy fleet. Every second spent on diplomacy was one less second, preparing for battle. With a soft hiss, the shuttle's door slid open, revealing Captain Gray and two Violin officials. They stepped forward cautiously, their large amber eyes scanning the human welcoming party. Gray wore what appeared to be a formal uniform, deep blue with silver markings that matched those on their ships. "Captain Gray," Reed said, stepping forward, "welcome aboard the Deterrent." Gray placed his right hand over his chest and bowed slightly. "Commander Reed, the Valen High Council sends their gratitude for your swift response." His gaze drifted around the massive hangar bay, taking in the fighters and combat shuttles arrayed around them. "Though we admit, we did not expect such a significant military presence." Reed's expression stayed neutral. "When we received your distress call and the data on the Mord Collective, our Security Council deemed a full military response necessary." Dr. Miller stepped forward with a warm smile. "I'm Dr. Anna Miller, xenobiologist and First Contact A specialist." "There is much for us to learn from one another, Captain Gray." Gray's companions exchanged nervous glances. One, a female Valen with darker blue skin markings, leaned close to him and whispered something. Gray nodded and then turned back to the humans. "This is Science Director Pell," he said, gesturing toward the female, "and Defense Coordinator Jax," indicating the stockier Valen with a mechanical augmentation around his left eye. Jax spoke through his translator, his voice a deep rumble. "Your weapon systems are impressive. We did not realize humans had advanced so far since our last observations." Reed raised an eyebrow. "And when was that last observation of Earth?" The three Valen exchanged uncomfortable looks before Gray answered, "Approximately 300 Earth years ago. We observed your early combustion engines and primitive radio transmissions." Dr. Miller couldn't help but laugh softly. "That explains their surprise. Humanity has changed considerably since then." "Perhaps we should continue this discussion somewhere more comfortable," Reed suggested, motioning toward the exit. "We've prepared a conference room, and our chefs have attempted to create food compatible with Valen biology based on the data you sent." As they walked through the corridors of the vast warship, the Valen visitors could barely conceal their awe. Crew members paused to stare, then returned to their duties. For most, this was their first time encountering an alien species face to face. "Your ship is formidable," Gray commented, glancing toward a weapons testing range where Marines practiced, with advanced energy rifles. "The Deterrent is our fleet flagship," Reed explained. "One of 3 dreadnoughts we brought." Jax's mechanical eye whirred as he scanned the surroundings. 3? Your message indicated 50 vessels, correct? 3 dreadnoughts, 15 cruisers, 20 destroyers, and 12 support ships?" The Valen stopped walking for a moment, stunned by the casual mention of such firepower. Pell, the science director, found her voice first. "The entirety of the remaining Valon Defense Force consists of 17 vessels, the largest being approximately the size of what you would classify as a destroyer." Reed nodded sympathetically. "Which is why we're here. The data you sent suggested the Mord Collective has at least 60 ships currently in this sector." They entered the conference room where a large display showed the current positions of both fleets in the system. The Mord forces appeared as red markers on the far side, while the human fleet was represented by blue indicators near the Valen homeworld. "They're gathering their forces," Jax noted, studying the display. "The Mord typically attack in waves, overwhelming defenses through sheer numbers." Reed gestured for everyone to take seats around the table. "Tell me about your previous encounters with them. The tactical data you sent was helpful, but I want to hear about their behavior patterns from someone with direct experience. As Gray began explaining, Dr. Miller observed the interactions closely. The Valen were clearly desperate but also frightened, not just of the Mord, but potentially of humans as well. They had reached out for help, but the scale of humanity's response had clearly shocked them. Meanwhile, at the edge of the system, a small human scout ship drifted silently, its advanced stealth systems rendering it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. Inside, Lieutenant Maria Diaz watched her display as 3 moored scout vessels approached. "Hold position," she ordered her crew. The bridge crew remained silent, watching as the insect-like moored ships moved into optimal range. Unlike the elegant Valen vessels or the angular human ships, the Morty craft were asymmetrical with strange protrusions and a chitinous appearance. "They're scanning the area," reported the sensor officer. "But they haven't detected us yet." Diaz nodded. "Weapon status? Phase cannons charged and locked. New targeting algorithms loaded. Fire on my mark." Diaz waited as the lead moored vessel moved directly into their kill zone. The scout ship's phase cannons fired. Energy beams passed directly through the moored shields as if they weren't there. The lead ship's hull ruptured immediately, atmosphere venting into space before secondary explosions tore it apart. "Target 2 and 3, fire," Diaz ordered. Before the remaining moored vessels could react, they met the same fate. Within moments, all 3 enemy scouts were reduced to drifting debris. Diaz opened a secure channel to the Deterrent Scout 7 command. First engagement complete. Phase weapons performed exactly as predicted. Their shields offered no resistance. "No survivors, no distress signals detected," Commander Reed's voice came through the comm. "Good work, Scout 7. Return to formation. We'll analyze your combat data immediately." As the scout ship turned back toward the human fleet, Lieutenant Diaz felt a mix of satisfaction and unease. The weapons had worked perfectly, almost too perfectly. If the rest of the moored ships were equally vulnerable, this might be a shorter conflict than anyone had anticipated. Back in the conference room, Reed received the combat report while the discussion with the Valen continued. He exchanged a look with his tactical officer, who nodded slightly. "Captain Gray," Reed interrupted politely, "we've just had our first engagement with moored scout vessels. 3 ships, all neutralized." The Valen delegation froze, their expressions showing disbelief. "Already?" Jax asked. "You engaged them? Without coordination with our forces?" Reed's face remained impassive. "Our scout ships were monitoring the system perimeter. The moored vessels approached, action was taken, and the outcome—" "Complete neutralization," Gray asked carefully. "Our phase shift weapons bypassed their shields entirely, just as our analysts predicted based on your data." The conference room fell silent as the implications sank in. Science Director Pell was the first to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. "You mean you've already found a way to defeat their primary defense?" Dr. Miller nodded. "Our scientists analyzed the shield frequencies in the data you sent. The Mord rely on quantum-linked deflection fields, but they operate on predictable harmonics. Our phase weapons fire at precisely the frequencies their shields cannot block." Gray looked at his fellow Valen, then back to the humans. "We've been fighting them for years and never discovered this weakness." Reed leaned forward. "Sometimes it takes a fresh perspective, Captain. Now let's discuss how our forces can work together. The Mord will know we're here now, and they'll be coming in force." As the tactical planning began in earnest, Valen started to realize that the humans hadn't just brought ships and weapons, they'd brought hope in the form of new ideas and approaches. The tide was about to turn in a war they had been losing for far too long. The command center of the deterrent hummed with focused energy as officers moved with practiced precision between stations. On the main display, red icons representing the moored fleet shifted formation. Energy sliced through the void, passing through Morde shields and cutting deep into their hulls. Several smaller Morde vessels exploded instantly, while the larger ships sustained visible damage but pressed onward. "They're returning fire," Tactical Officer Vega reported. The Morde weapons were plasma-based, superheated matter that splashed against human shields in vibrant bursts of color. Unlike the Violin shields, which had folded quickly under such attacks, the human defenses held firm. "Shield effectiveness at 87%, the defense officer confirmed. "The new harmonics are working." Reed allowed himself a small smile. Based on the Valen data, his engineers had recalibrated their shield frequencies to better resist the Morde weapons. It wasn't perfect, but it gave them a fighting chance. "The Valen destroyer Windstar is taking heavy fire," the tactical officer called out urgently. "Their shields are failing. Direct cruisers, Resolute and Dauntless, to provide cover." On the tactical display, 2 human cruisers broke formation and moved swiftly to flank the struggling Valen vessel. Their point defense systems activated, intercepting incoming Morde fire, while their main weapons targeted the attackers. Captain Gray watched with amazement. "Your ships move with such coordination, yet each captain seems to make independent decisions." "Initiative within structure," Reed explained. "Every commander knows the overall strategy, but has freedom to adapt tactically." The battle intensified as the Morde pressed their attack. Despite initial losses, they advanced relentlessly, seemingly unconcerned with casualties. 3 human destroyers suffered critical damage, their crews evacuated to nearby support vessels. A Violin light cruiser exploded spectacularly, sending debris scattering across the battlefield. "They're still coming," Gray observed, his voice tight with concern. "Our losses are mounting." Reed's expression remained determined. "Dr. Miller, status on the disruption signal?" Miller's voice came through the comm. "Ready, Commander. Captain Gray's ship is in position to broadcast." Aboard the Seeker, First Officer Trell monitored the integrated human device, now part of their communications array. "Broadcasting now, Captain," she reported via secure channel to Gray. The effect was not immediately visible, but sensors told the true story. Across the Morde fleet, ship movements became erratic. Vessels drifted out of formation, fired at incorrect targets, or ceased firing altogether. "It's working," Trell exclaimed. "Their coordination is breaking down." From the deterrent, Reed saw the opportunity clearly. "All ships concentrate fire on their command vessels. Target the largest ships at the center of their formation." The human fleet responded immediately, focusing their considerable firepower on the massive Morde vessels directing the smaller ships. Phase cannons cut through their defenses while conventional weapons hammered the already damaged sections. One by one, the large Morde command ships exploded, massive fireballs blooming in the darkness of space before being extinguished by the vacuum. With each destruction, more Morde vessels lost coordination, breaking formation. Their formation is breaking. "Down!" Tactical Officer Vega reported breathlessly. Unable to keep the excitement from his voice, Reed announced, "Multiple ships are withdrawing." Gray stared at the display in disbelief. "I've never seen the Morde retreat, never." Reed watched as the enemy fleet scattered, some ships jumping out of the system while others continued fighting, but without coordination. "They're not defeated," he cautioned, "just confused. Without their command structure, the hive mind has temporarily fractured." Dr. Miller studied the sensor readings carefully. "The effect won't last. They'll adapt to our frequency and re-establish their network. Then we press the advantage while we have it," Reed decided. "All ships pursue and engage. Don't let their larger vessels escape." The human fleet surged forward, breaking their defensive formation to chase the retreating Morde ships. The Valen vessels joined the pursuit, their crews fighting with renewed vigor, now that victory seemed possible. Hours later, the space around the Valen homeworld was quiet again. Debris from destroyed ships drifted silently, while rescue vessels moved among damaged craft, retrieving survivors and offering assistance. On the observation deck of the deterrent, Reed stood with Captain Gray, looking out at the stars. 23 human ships damaged, Reed said quietly. 8 destroyed completely, though we managed to save most of the crews. 4 of your vessels lost. He turned to Gray. A high price, but your homeworld is safe. For now. Gray nodded slowly. My people have never known such sacrifice from outsiders. We called for help, expecting perhaps advice or a single ship. Instead, you brought a fleet and shed human blood for Valen lives. He placed his hand over his chest, in the Valen gesture of deep respect. We cannot repay such a debt. This isn't over, Reed cautioned. The Mord will return, possibly with new defenses against our weapons and tactics. But Gray's voice held newfound confidence. When they do, they will find humans and Valen standing together. He paused, looking out at the stars. My people once thought we were alone in facing extinction. Now we know differently. As damage reports continued to come in and repair crews worked tirelessly, a message arrived from Earth. Admiral Wilson was en route with reinforcements and experimental weapons specifically designed to target the Mord collective consciousness. The tide of war had turned, but the true test was yet to come. The Great Hall of the Valen High Council had never hosted so many different beings. Sunlight streamed through tall crystal windows, casting rainbow patterns across the gathered crowd of humans and Valen. At the center of the hall stood a memorial, a sculpture depicting intertwined human and Valen hands reaching toward the stars. 3 weeks had passed since the decisive battle that had driven the Mord collective from Valen space. 3 weeks of rebuilding, healing, and forging new bonds between species who until recently had been strangers. Admiral Wilson stood before the assembled crowd, his white uniform pristine, posture perfect, despite the fatigue lining his face. Beside him stood Council Leader Vax, the aged Valen elder, leaning slightly on a ceremonial staff. Today, we honor those who gave their lives to protect this world, Wilson began, his voice carrying through the hall, human and Valen alike. They fought together against a common enemy. Their sacrifice has purchased us a future. For a long moment, the crowd remained silent and respectful. Among them were the crews of both fleets, some still bearing visible injuries from the battle. The Mord collective has retreated, but not surrendered, Admiral Wilson continued. Our intelligence suggests they are regrouping, adapting, when they return. And they will return. They will be ready for the tactics that defeated them before. Council Leader Vax stepped forward, his voice steady and resolute, which is why today is not only about remembrance, but about the future. Our scientists have already begun working with human experts to develop new defenses and weapons. What the Mord could not anticipate before, they will find doubly surprising when they return. From his place near the front of the crowd, Captain Gray watched with a mixture of pride and humility. Beside him stood Commander Reed, still recovering from injuries sustained when his bridge was damaged in the final moments of the battle. You know, Gray said quietly to Reed. When I sent that message to Earth, I truly believed we might receive a single diplomat or perhaps a small science vessel. Reed smiled slightly. Humanity learned long ago that half measures rarely succeed. When we commit fully. A philosophy my people would do well to adopt. Gray admitted, we spent too long hoping the Mord would simply pass us by, until it was almost too late. At the center of the hall, Admiral Wilson resumed. Today, I am authorized by the United Earth Security Council to propose a formal alliance between our peoples, not merely a military pact, but a true partnership sharing knowledge, resources, and a common vision for the future. A murmur of excitement passed through the crowd as Council Leader Vax raised his hands. The High Council has voted unanimously to accept this proposal, From this day forward, the Valen Confederation joins the interstellar cooperative Earth has been building among peaceful species. Dr. Miller, standing with her research team, could barely contain her smile. "This is extraordinary," she whispered to her assistant, Tom. "Just weeks ago, the Valen didn't even know modern humans existed. Now we're allies." Tom nodded. "Nothing unites like a common enemy." "It's more than that," Miller insisted. "Look around you. The cultural exchange has already begun. Indeed, throughout the hall, humans and Valen mingled, sharing stories, comparing experiences. Near one wall, a human engineer was deep in conversation with a Valen scientist, both gesturing excitedly over a holographic display of engine schematics. Admiral Wilson stepped back as Council Leader Vax continued the ceremony, presenting medals to heroes from both species. Among the first called forward was Captain Gray, restored not only to his former rank, but promoted to serve as the official Valen liaison to the human fleet. "For a vision that reaches beyond the stars," Vax proclaimed, placing a shimmering medallion around Gray's neck. "And for the courage to seek help when all seemed lost." Gray bowed deeply, then faced the crowd. "I merely sent a message," he said. "It was humanity who answered, not with words, but with ships and brave souls willing to fight for strangers." He looked directly at Commander Reed. "That is a lesson the Valen will never forget." Reed nodded in acknowledgement, his expression solemn but his eyes showing deep respect. Later that evening, as the formal ceremonies concluded, Admiral Wilson stood on a balcony overlooking the Valen capital city. Its architecture was unlike anything on Earth, graceful spires and flowing structures seeming to defy gravity, all illuminated by soft blue lighting that complemented the twin moons hanging in the night sky. Commander Reed joined him, moving carefully due to his healing injuries. "Beautiful world," he commented. "Worth protecting." Wilson nodded. "And strategic. When the Mord return, this will be our forward base of operations, already planning the next battle." "Admiral," Wilson turned to face his officer, "the reinforcements I brought include the new resonance disruptors based on Dr. Miller's findings. They should be able to target the Mord hive mind more directly, possibly even sever their connections permanently." Reed considered this thoughtfully. "That could either defeat them entirely or turn them into something unpredictable." Wilson finished. "Yes. But it's a risk we need to take." Their conversation was interrupted as Captain Gray approached, accompanied by Dr. Miller. "Admiral, Commander Gray," Gray greeted them. "I hope we're not intruding." "Not at all," Wilson assured him. "What brings you here?" Miller stepped forward, excitement evident in her voice. "We've been analyzing the long-range communications data from our outer system sensors. There are signals coming from at least 3 other systems in nearby sectors." "Mord communications?" Reed asked immediately. "Alert?" "No," Gray replied. "They appear to be distress calls, similar to the one we sent to Earth. Other species who have heard about what happened here." Wilson's eyebrows rose. "Word travels fast," Gray explained. "The Mord have been expanding for decades. Many civilizations lie in their path. Until now, resistance seemed futile. But after what happened here, hope spreads," Miller finished. "They've learned that humanity responds to calls for help." Wilson looked out at the alien city, then up at the stars visible above it, each one potentially harboring life, cultures, people who might be facing their own desperate struggles against the darkness. "Then we have work to do," he said simply. "Commander, Reed, prepare a report for Earth. We'll need more ships, more personnel." Reed nodded. "The Mord won't expect us to expand outward while they regroup." "Exactly." Wilson turned to Gray. "Captain, would the Valen be willing to send representatives with us to these other systems? New allies might respond better to a diverse delegation." Gray placed his hand over his chest in the Valen gesture of commitment. My people would be honored. We called for help and received it. Now we can do the same for others. As they stood on the balcony, a flight of ships passed overhead, the distinctive angular shapes of human vessels flying in formation alongside the sleeker Valen craft. Together they rose into the night sky, a visible symbol of the new alliance. When the Mord fled, Gray said softly, one of our philosophers said something I found profound. In calling to the stars for salvation, we never imagined the stars would answer so thunderously. Miller smiled. That's humanity for you. We tend to make an entrance. The four of them watched as the patrol ships disappeared into the darkness above, carrying hope and the promise of a brighter future.